Good day. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Montreal, Canada for Reason to Resist on June 24th, 2025. On Monday, June 16th, Israel's military forces bombed the headquarters of Iran's state broadcaster in Tehran. The attack killed and wounded numerous persons. Yesterday, June 23rd, Israel's genocidal regime attacked the Iranian state media broadcasting complex again. The sprawling media complex is situated in northern Tehran. I happened to visit the complex repeatedly when I was in Tehran in early May, about 6 weeks ago, for the Sobe Media Festival. At the time of Israel's first attack on the complex on June 16th, Iranian state media were broadcasting live from the targeted building. A now viral video shows a female Iranian journalist shouting defiance at the genocidal entity as it bombed the broadcasting center.
صدای متجاوز به صدای حق و حقیقت است. آنچه که ملاحظه کردید، صدایی که شنیدید، فضای غبارآلوده استادیوم.
Israel's second strike on the broadcasting complex occurred while hundreds of civilians were working there. These attacks on media professionals are just the latest examples of Israel's murderous assaults on journalism. According to the Committee to Protect Journalism, Israel has killed 178 journalists in Gaza alone during the past 20 months of Western-backed genocide. Now here to discuss Israel's attacks in Tehran with me is a survivor of the first attack on the state media complex in northern Tehran. Her name is Elham Abedini, and she is an anchor and presenter of a political program called Today's War. She joins us today from Tehran. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Dimitri, for having me.
So just before we begin, Elham, I just want to point out what may be obvious to our viewers right now. You have a bit of a difficult internet connection, but we're gonna do our best with the connection that you have. So, Elham, first of all, we're very grateful that you're safe. We know that it's been extraordinarily dangerous for all Iranians during this time, but particularly those who are working in your position. Could you begin by telling us about the attack last Monday? Where were you at the time, and what did you witness?
Dimitri, from the first day of the war, we knew that the IRIB headquarters would be one of the main targets of Israeli. I mean, all of my colleagues talking about this. Every day they thought that Israel would target here because before we witnessed these things in Gaza, in even Lebanon. So we thought that even as a symbolic issue, we think that Israel would target this building because it could scare people, because it was a very big building, and Iranian people knew that building. In many shows, they see that building. So all of us think about these things, but especially in that day after IDF published one map, and in that map, IRIB headquarters was in the map that they said you have to evacuate there. We almost know that they would target this building from at least from the noon. But all of my colleagues think that we should not lose the air connection. Even some personnel from the from different buildings evacuate there, but who were in the studio, anchors, presenters, they stay there because they really committed to keep the air connection. In Tehran times, it was about 6:30 something. I go on broadcasting. I actually perform my shows, and as soon as my shows finished, about just 1 minute or 2 minutes, something like this, 1 minute about, the first explosion we heard. And the first explosion was in the fourth floor of the building, which were the offices of the senior managers of IRIB. And after that, we evacuated the building. some of us still, after I myself evacuate the building, still, for instance, Sahar Emami, who you said, the anchor who were there and still talk about what happened there. And also some of my colleagues, still they stayed there. But I myself, with some of my colleagues, evacuate the building. And I decided to do a live Instagram videos because I didn't know that we are now in live on air or not, because I didn't know that still Sahar Emami is on air. And I tried to keep it as a live thing, and people show to people that what happened to a broadcasting the place that is not anything related to military bases, military things. We didn't have any weapons, enriched uranium. We didn't have anything. There was just some journalists, some editors, some cameramen. And I did a live Instagram, but fortunately, after the strike, I see that it was on air still, and Sahar Emami narrate what happened there. And I think three of my colleagues unfortunately killed in that strike, but many wounded, more than 20 people wounded in that strike, but about 10 people were hospitalized. Fortunately, they are in a stable condition. Some of them just discharged from the hospital. But the important issue, I think, is that we had to document that strike to show that Israeli regime has no any red line. And this was not the first time, and this would not be the last time. Any countries in our region would be in the position of these kind of targets.
Mm-hmm. So the three people who were killed in that strike, were any of them journalists?
Yes. One of them were journalists, and two others were some personnel of that place in offices. They work in offices, but one of them was the editor-in-chief of news channel. Mr. Nima Rajapur were journalist, and he were in the studio. He were in the studio when the strike happened.
And has the strike effectively destroyed the building? Is it unusable now, or are parts of it still functional?
No, it's completely destroyed. It's completely destroyed. It's completely unusable. Even its facilities, studios, I mean, computers, many things, and even I mean, some of my colleagues had their personal things there. In there, for instance, bookshelf and these things, and all of them just destroyed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And could you tell us about the attack yesterday? What happened in that instance?
Yesterday, another attack happened near the building of IRIB headquarters, in another building which they were working in media things, but not related to IRIB, but it was next to IRIB, and I'm not sure about the technical issues, but it impacted on IRIB broadcasting, and we lost the connection and we lost the air for some minutes. I'm sure that, for instance, our news channel lost its connection for some minutes, and many people during that time called me, and they said again they Israeli strike your headquarters, and we were there. They just tried to get some news from me and ask my ask about what happened there. But fortunately, that time it was not our building, but it's not really. This is not the case, because that building, again, they were work on these media things.
Mm-hmm. And since the first attack, have you been able to continue to do your program from another location?
Yes, fortunately, we did it. We did it 1 day after the strike. Again, we resume our program.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to talk to you now about this ceasefire, Elham. When I originally asked you to speak to Reason to Resist, obviously I didn't know we would find ourselves in this position when I spoke to you today. So this morning, technically, a ceasefire is reportedly in effect, at least in theory. And the Israelis claimed that the Iranian military fired a missile 1 hour after the ceasefire was supposed to come into effect. The Iranian military has denied this. The Israelis predictably have not produced any evidence to support their claim. Then the Israeli defense minister announced that in retaliation for this alleged violation of the ceasefire, Israel was going to bomb Iran again. And then Donald Trump, as you may know, basically blew his stack and began swearing in front of the American media at both Iran and Israel, although he seemed to be particularly upset with Israel and warned them not to bomb Iran again. What, in fact, has happened to your knowledge since the ceasefire went into effect? What do you make of all of these allegations? And did Israel, in fact, attack Iran again after the ceasefire went into effect?
Yes, we faced another strikes after they ceasefire claims. In some of cities, for instance, in Bobulsar, I think we had a strike again after the ceasefire, for instance. They said. But the issue is that even before the Israeli defense minister said that we would do retaliation, all of us knew that this is kind of doctrine that Israel had. We saw this doctrine before in Lebanon, at least, and I think the current situation of Iran is really similar to what happened for Lebanon. They just try to make some kind of ceasefire, but they would continue this. So they would violate this ceasefire again and again. And this is the thing that we expect that. Even before that, after the United States strike three of our nuclear facilities, some of analysts said that because these nuclear facilities didn't damage harm, we should not respond to the United States. But the issue is that the United States actually violates our sovereignty. So we have to respond that, because if we didn't play a game with a high risk, they would they find their way. They find their way and they do it again and again. And now I think that Israeli regime would violate this kind of ceasefire with different claims, and I expect they just try to buy some time to rebuild themselves. And again, I myself expect that we would face another massive strike in some weeks later, some months later. I don't know, but I'm sure that this is not a peace. They would not end this war because any of their goals not keep real. Israeli regime had two main goals. They want to destroy nuclear facilities and nuclear capacities of Iran, and this is not came true. And the second of the goal is regime change. In the first day, they tried to make a surprise attack and killed many of our commanders, and they tried to destroy the establishment of Iran to put Iran in a civil war. And when it does not happen, they started these massive strikes against Iran. So I think that this ceasefire, even if it became stable for some weeks, I'm sure that they would do it again with even more and harder things. And I think they would cross more red lines even next time.
This bombing that happened yesterday that Israel did after the ceasefire went into effect, was it on Tehran? Do you know what they struck? Or did you hear any explosions in the capital?
Actually, last night, and also the night before that was the longest and hardest nights in during these 12 days. Uh, I myself were in somewhere in north of Tehran, and near of us there were no explosion, but the explosion was so heavy, and even we heard the explosion and all of the glasses just shaking. I mean, the explosion was really hard, and it lasted till 4:30 or 5. I mean, even 1 hour after that ceasefire. Even 1 hour after the ceasefire announced, Mr. Araqchi tweets, I still heard some explosions, some these kind of sounds. So I think they cannot, they try, but they cannot change the narrative.
Right. But this thing that this attack they said they were going to do on Iran after the ceasefire came into effect, supposedly for retaliation to a missile launched from Iran after the ceasefire came into effect, that attack which happened today, or they said they were going to do you know what they struck in that attack?
I'm not sure, but during the 2 days, I'm not sure really. I'm not sure what they strike today.
And has the Iranian government or military said what they're going to do in response to this latest provocation, to the bombing that Israel did after the ceasefire came into effect? Do you think that they're going to hit Israel back, or do you think that they're going to refrain from hitting Israel again?
I think they would respond because there is no other option. And again, this is my own analysis that we have to make a high risk game with Israel. If we don't respond, it not stop them. They would come closer and closer.
Yeah, and you indicated a couple of minutes ago that you believe this is not over and that there's going to be a continuation of this war. Do you think that that view is widely shared amongst your fellow Iranians, or do you think your view is a minority view?
What a hard question, because some ordinary people just try to still make some hope that Israel would commit to this kind of ceasefire. I don't think that this analysis is kind of minority things. I think majority of Iranian people, especially after what happened in Gaza, majority of Iranian people now knew that what Israel can do, and anything can. Actually, there is no red line for Israel, but in other side, there are some Iranian people that think that if we stop responding, they would stop to at least for some months, some years, but majority of people knew that Israeli problem is not really about nuclear things, or this is not something about even the current establishment of Iran, even about what happened after the Islamic Revolution. I mean, this is more than that. And I think majority of Iranian people knew that now.
And, we've seen these images every day during this criminal war of aggression that Israel launched on Iran, of Israelis running into the bomb shelters every time a missile launch is detected from Iran. When I was in Tehran, mind you, when I was there, the country wasn't being bombed, but I didn't see any bomb shelters in Tehran. Does the city have a kind of network of bomb shelters where people can go and seek refuge, or were people basically forced largely to seek refuge above ground?
There is no bomb shelters in Tehran, but I know that after the evacuation order or some posters by IDF published, some of our mosques in Tehran and also underground subway, they open the doors and ask people, if you want, you can go there, but there is no kind of shelter. There are some places, especially for earthquake, it was designed for that time. I mean, it's not shelter for protecting from bombing, but there are some public places that people can go there. But this is not something like shelters that Israeli have. But this is another issue that Iranians should do something for these things when we have this kind of enemy and we actually expect this war all of these years. Actually, we have to think about this.
Right. And do you know what the current civilian death toll is in Iran since the Israelis launched this war of aggression?
Yeah, 606 people killed in these 12 days.
Wow. And how many wounded, do you know?
I'm not sure, but it's more than at least 2,000. I'm not sure about the exact number, but it's more than that.
What do you think the mood in the country is right now, Elham? How do you think, generally speaking, obviously there's a diversity of opinions and so forth. How do you think people generally feel about the Iranian military's government and government's response to these attacks?
I myself think that majority of people are happy now, and they are hopeful that this ceasefire would continue at least for some days, and they think that such as two other operations before this third one, the first and the second one that we had before, they think that after this massive war, we would not face another massive war, and they are happy with that. And another thing is that I see, for instance, ordinary.
Unfortunately, we seem to have lost our connection to Elham. We have made numerous attempts to reestablish a connection. We will conclude our conversation there, and hopefully she's safe, and we will be able to continue our conversation with Elham in the days ahead. For now, this is Dimitri Lascaris signing off from Montreal, Canada on June 24th, 2025.